So what is the Abomination of Desolation? This is Pastor Wagner, and it's my weekly video blog. If you're familiar with what is called the Olivet Discourse, the discourse that Jesus gave on the Mount of Olives in Matthew 24, in Mark 13, and in Luke 21, you probably have heard of what Jesus called the Abomination of Desolation, which he was referring to what Daniel said back there in the prophecy of the book of Daniel, of things to come at that time. And a lot of people have various ideas about what this Abomination of Desolation is, and I don't obviously have time in a 5 or 10 minute video blog to go over the 70 weeks prophecy in Daniel and the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24. But a lot of people say that this was a time when in yet future, when the Antichrist will make a covenant with Israel, and then he'll break that covenant, and he'll do some kind of a sacrifice, some unholy sacrifice in the temple, and that's what the Abomination of Desolation is. But all we really have to do is compare the three renderings in the Gospels of Jesus' words, and we'll be able to see clearly and plainly what this Abomination of Desolation is. So first I'm going to read from Matthew 24. I'm going to read from verses 9 through 19. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. Jesus here in Matthew 24, in what is called the Olivet Discourse, was answering questions from his disciples when Jesus told them in the beginning of the chapter that all of the stones that they saw of the temple that the disciples had pointed out to Jesus, these beautiful buildings, he said there's a day coming when not one of those stones is going to be left on another. And they asked him, when shall these things be, and when shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And he's answering these three questions in this Olivet Discourse. This portion that we read here, he's answering the question of when shall these things be? When will the temple be destroyed? Let's look at what Mark says in Mark 13. He says virtually the same thing. He says, and ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. So same thing that Matthew said in the beginning there. But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains, and let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house, neither enter therein to take anything out of his house. And let him that is in the field not turn back again to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. We see there virtually the same thing. Matthew gave a little bit more detail, but they both talk about the disciples seeing this abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel. What is that abomination? That's the question. What is that abomination of desolation? Well, we need to look no further than Luke 21, and as I will show you here, when we look at the context, these are the same exact words that Christ spoke. But in Luke records, apparently, some other words that Jesus spoke, which Matthew and Mark did not. It says there in Luke 21, 17 through 23, and ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but there shall not an hair of your head perish. In your patience possess ye your souls. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. Let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. for there shall be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. You notice all three of these passages start out with Jesus saying that they would be hated of all men for his name's sake, and all three of these passages end saying, woe unto them that are with child and give suck in those days. This is the exact same parallel text of what Jesus said. In Matthew and in Mark, he said, when ye shall see the abomination of desolation stand where it ought not. In Luke, he said, when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. The abomination of desolation was not the Antichrist 2,000 years later breaking a covenant with Israel or any other such foolishness. The abomination of desolation is when they would see Jerusalem compassed about with armies. And we know, if you look back in history, that this happened. In 66 A.D., Cestius, when the Roman armies compassed Jerusalem. And then, as Josephus says, for no reason in the world, he left, departed. Now the believers that Jesus was speaking to here, they remembered what Jesus said. Oh, when we see Jerusalem compassed with armies, head for the hills. They got out. They headed for the hills. And then Titus, Roman general, came back shortly after that, and he besieged the city, and the destruction was total. It was a desolation. A desolation, as in the abomination of desolation, a desolation, the primary definition from the Oxford English Dictionary, is the action of laying waste a land, etc., destroying its people, crops, and buildings, and making it unfit for habitation, utter devastation, an act or occasion of this kind. This is precisely what happened in 70 A.D. Utter, complete destruction. About 90% of the Jews were killed. The rest were all carried captive into other lands. Total destruction. And what Jesus said, that not one stone would stand upon another in that temple, that's exactly what happened. It was all thrown down. Perfect fulfillment in 70 A.D. That is the abomination of desolation. We're not waiting for it. It happened a long time ago. There could be a lot more said, and maybe that'll be the topic of another video blog or a sermon. If you go to the church website, you can see more detailed explanations of these things there. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week, Lord willing.